Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Andrew Musgrove here. Hope you guys are all doing well. If you're watching on YouTube, do hit thumbs up, do hit subscribe and get into the comments. If you're listening on the audio only platform, thank you as always. Leave us a rating and review. And a big thanks to NORD VPN, our sponsors of the Everything is Black and White podcast. If you want a discounted offer on your NORD VPN plan, do hit the link in the podcast description box. No risk with NORD because it's a 30-day money back guarantee. Whole host of benefits, one subscription, 10 devices, so it's value for money. And the one I like the best is that if you're on the train, you're on the bus, and you're on public Wi-Fi, NORD offers that extra added element of security to protect your details from potential scammers. So do sign up and support the podcast at the same time. Thanks to NORD. Hit the link in the podcast description box. Right, today's video all about the transfer window. Obviously closes Monday 7 p.m, so we've got 34 hours to go until it does close. And for once we're expecting Newcastle United to actually be busy in that time. Whether that results in any more players coming in, that remains to be seen. But in previous windows, it's kind of been acknowledged that actually it's not even worth suggesting they're in for player A or player B because we just know they're not. This time around, they are actively still looking to add to the squad, midfielder and a striker. Now, obviously, there's a whole host of things in play, especially when it comes to that second striker. And this Sunday morning, oh my God, it has exploded. The soap opera, the saga over Yoane Wissa has gone to another level, but a familiar level because he's released a statement and he's followed the path of Alexander Isak. He has claimed that he hasn't refused to train, he hasn't refused to play. In the statement, though, he has claimed that he had it in writing that he could leave this summer if a reasonable offer was put on the table to Brentford. Now, as you guys are well aware, Brentford have moved the goalposts several times when it comes to prices. It started about 40 million, then it's now, at this present point in time, reportedly 60 plus million pounds, which is just ridiculous demands from Brentford, but it is their prerogative. And of course, they have been looking for a striker, much like Newcastle have been looking for a striker to allow Alexander Isak to go. Brentford have been doing the same, and over the weekend they have been rejected by Borussia Dortmund's Max Beer. They thought they had him. He looks a good player. Sam Mullen, a friend of the podcast, actually really likes him. Would like to see him in black and white. Brentford thought they had him done and dusted, and he's rejected that move. Now, if he'd come in, Wissa most likely would have gone. And as it is, Brentford are actively looking for a striker, but if they don't get one, then they're unlikely to let Wissa leave. Now, prior to this statement, I thought it would have been quite easy for Brentford to reintegrate Wissa into the squad because he has trained. He's on good terms with the manager, and of course we hadn't seen a statement. But at the end of this statement, he actually pleads with the Brentford board to let him go. And I think that kind of takes things to another route. We're looking at the Alexander Isak situation and question whether he can be reintegrated. I think that's really, really hard because he's been very, very strong on his stance. He doesn't want to play for Newcastle United again, and obviously he's really rocked the boat with teammates, fan base and manager. Well, Wissa hadn't done that. Does that statement take him up to Alexander Isak levels? I mean, he's not far off. I mean, his behaviour hasn't been brilliant. It's not been as bad as Isak's, but that's not defending it. But I think the plea to say, please do let me go, makes it a little bit harder to reintegrate him into that Brentford squad, which obviously then maybe plays into Newcastle's hands. I still think there's a chance this deal could get done. Newcastle, at this present point in time, they're not too confident. They haven't really been given any signs or encouragement from Brentford, who are quite happy to either manage to sign a replacement or keep Wissa. And I think Wissa, he's a professional at the end of the day, and I think if this deal doesn't come off, he will end up playing for Brentford again and banging in the goals. Yes, he may be a little bit put out, but at the end of the day, football is football. Players want to play, and if that's the only opportunity for him to do so, then that's the only opportunity for him to do so. But I still think this deal could be done. Obviously, it does rely on Brentford probably getting in a replacement, but one to watch. Obviously, we've got Strand Larsen as well as the other name on Newcastle's radar, but Wolves have been very, very clear with this one. He's not for sale. A little bit interesting that they entertained two offers before making that known that they don't want to sell him. Again, time not on Newcastle's hands when it came to the Strand Larsen bid, because how could they replace him in time? Obviously, they've signed Tulu Akadue from Genk, one of my picks of the summer. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does in the Premier League. but not a replacement for Strand Larsen, who missed Saturday's game against Everton with an Achilles injury. But Wolves boss, Victor Pereira, very, very clear that it was an injury. That's why he was sitting out and not because he's going to be on his way to Tyneside. You do wonder, though, whether Newcastle United look at it and go, okay, we've bid, 60 million for him, whatever it was. Wolves says not for sale. Do we just put in a bit of a silly bid? Like maybe 65, 70, 75? And I know those numbers are crazy. But they probably think, well, actually, if we get him in, a man who's scored goals in the Premier League, he guarantees you probably 10 to 12 goals a season, alongside Nick Voltemade, and that fires us to the Champions League. The other option is that we don't sign another striker, we don't get Strand Larsen or Wissa through the door, and we have to somehow try to reintegrate Alexander Isak, which is going to be a massive challenge, as I've already said. I don't see how that can be done. So if they can kind of get past the number, which is weird in a sense to say, and put in a bid that just makes Wolves think, do you know what, yes, we'll accept it, it's silly money, but if he gets you the goals, it doesn't really matter, and then they sell Alexander Isak for 130 million plus add-ons, I think Newcastle United will be quite happy with that. What about you guys? Let me know. I mean, if you're asking right now for my prediction of how the window goes, and the next day, do Newcastle sign a striker? I would really love them to, because my perfect window ends with them signing a striker, whether that be Wissa or Strand Larsen, and then Alexander Isak going for 130 plus million. But looking at it realistically, can I see it happening? Yeah, I'm less confident, I'll be honest. And it appears that Liverpool, and whether they're playing a game or not, I mean, anyone's guess is as good as mine here. Whether they're playing a little bit of a game when it comes to Isak, they don't at this moment seem to be backing for him. They have £110 million plus add-ons on the table. That got rejected, and that's at the moment where they are stopping. It's going to be really interesting to see if this is just a game from them and they do indeed come back in. And then what happens? If they come back in tomorrow morning, 130 million plus add-ons, and Newcastle haven't got a second striker through the door, do Newcastle United actually say, yeah, we'll accept the bid anyway? I don't know. It's a really, really interesting final chapter of this summer transfer window that has yet to be written. Could Newcastle United look elsewhere other than the names being mentioned? I mean, Lookman, obviously once of Everton and Charlton, didn't exactly set the Premier League alight, but he's been fantastic over in Serie A for Atalanta. Now, he's wanted to move to Inter Milan. That's been rejected, but he has put in a transfer request, so things aren't particularly rosy with him and his Italian club at the moment. He's been linked to Spurs. He's also been linked to Arsenal. £45 million is reportedly the price tag. And look, he gives you something different to any one of the strikers that we've mentioned, a bit more pace about him. And I'm a big fan of him. Obviously, Serie A to the Premier League doesn't always translate very well, but for £45 million, he's 27 years of age. Okay, so you probably wouldn't get too much of a sell-on value, but he's proven himself to be a prolific goal scorer in one of the best leagues in Europe. So that is another name that you could potentially see mentioned in the next few hours. Maybe that's just my opinion. I think there's a deal to be made there. Again, those bridges, have they been burnt enough that he can't return to the fold? And the other one is Lewis Apenza of Leipzig. Now, he's been linked to several teams. Bayern Munich, the latest one since that Nicholas Jackson deal has fallen through. Reportedly now available for €40 million, which seems a little bit of a snip, to be honest. He's got a good goal scoring record in the Bundesliga. I think he's 24, 25, Belgium international. He's got a bit of pace about him as well, and again offers something maybe a little bit different to what Newcastle are currently looking at or have got. Bayern Munich apparently looking for a loan, which then becomes a permanent deal. And if Newcastle United are really serious about getting a second striker in, that could be a move to go for. Could they rival Bayern Munich and take another player off their hands, another striker, as it did with Voltemade? Let's wait and see. But there are two names that maybe I would look at. They're just my opinion. I haven't heard anything from any sources or what have you, but definitely two deals are there to be made if Newcastle United are serious about getting that second striker in play. And I think what you saw obviously during that Leeds game, that 0-0, wasn't a good game at all, is that they are still missing probably a creative midfielder and obviously a striker. Willis Sula got handed his chance, but didn't do much. And I mean, no one did. I'm not just picking on the lad, but no one really stood out. It was a poor performance. Eddie Howe, of course, went to 5 at the back, and we'll talk about this more on the Monday show with Mark Covers. But a bit of a strange decision for many, given Newcastle played so well against Liverpool and Aston Villa, and he was going up against, you would say on paper, the worst side of the three, and he's gone to 5 at the back, which has left a few people scratching their heads why that happened. Obviously, big change with Barnes and Alanga not being in the squad in the starting 11 either. That raised a few eyebrows. But you trust the manager, you trust Jason Tindall to get it right. Unfortunately, some might argue against Leeds they didn't do. But nonetheless, an important point. If you can't win, you don't want to lose. Obviously, I did say on the podcast earlier in the week that if they're serious about Champions League, you've got to be beating teams like Leeds, whether you're home or away. And it just never looked likely to happen, did it, on Saturday, unfortunately. And you go on that international break now without a victory, which doesn't sit well with anyone, I guess, because, of course, you want to go on that international break with at least a win on the board. I mean, Sunderland have got 2, and Newcastle United, their run doesn't really get any easier. You got Bournemouth coming up, Wolves coming up. They have got a tough start this season. But they have played well enough that there's optimism and positivity to take. It's just unfortunate that the tally on the board so far sits at 1 rather than a few more. But yes, the transfer window is going to heat up even hotter over the next 32, 36 hours. And we'll be bringing it all to you via the Everything's Black and White podcast, via Chronicle Live. We'll have a live blog running, bringing you all the latest gossip and concrete stories as well. Could there be any more outgoings for Newcastle United? Maybe Joe Willock potentially. Is he happy to be playing? What is he now when you think about it? 4th, 5th, maybe 5th choice? Is he potentially 6th choice really? Injuries and what have you and all of that. But, penny for his thoughts since Jacob Ramsey's come in. But other than that, I don't think Newcastle United would look to move anybody else on. I mean, Matt Target obviously has gone to Borough. Got an assist over the weekend as Borough sit comfortably top of the championship. I think it's 4 wins out of 4 now, is it? Brilliant assist from him. But other than that, can't really see anybody else going out. They haven't really got the depth, you would argue, to allow anybody to go out. I know a few people suggested that Miley's performance against Leeds came on at half time. He looks like a man who needs first team football week in, week out. He's not going to get that at Newcastle United, so maybe he could go on a late loan. Look, if they get another midfielder in, you then could see one of Willock or Miley going out. One would be a cash deal, you would think, and the other would be a loan deal. But without another midfielder coming in, you can't see either of them leaving. Both would definitely have interest from obviously other clubs, because both are good players. And it's just whether the deals fit. Newcastle have been looking at midfielders to try and bring in more, because they're a bit worried about Toney. Obviously, he played against Leeds, so that shoulder injury he picked up against Liverpool turned out not to be anything serious. But they have been looking at Inter Milan midfielder is one name that continues to creep up, potential loan with a permanent deal next summer. So maybe one to watch there. But Newcastle United, for the first time in quite a few windows, not done in the transfer market, actively looking. And obviously we've got sagas upon sagas to play out. Will Yoane Wissa get his move from Brentford, and will Brentford bring the price tag down? If they do, Newcastle United will definitely take them up on it, but still 40-45 million is probably the highest they're going to go to. Or will they test Wolves one more time with another Stratton Larson bid? He wants to join Newcastle United, but he's being professional about it and isn't agitating for a move. But could a silly money bid persuade Wolves to sell and then open the door for Alexander Isak to move to Liverpool? They're the 3 main questions heading into the final day of this transfer window. I'll be back on Monday with the Monday Show with Mark Rose. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you very soon.